of my life and my portion forever. Come on, put your hands together. Come on. This is a simple song. We're going to have y'all sing it with us, all right? It says this. God is the strength of
in this text that I need you. So I need your Bibles to stay open and have your spots where you can move around. But if you look at we'll start about verse 3, chapter 37. We'll start about verse 3. I'm going to read a little bit longer than probably normal, but I need to set the context for you to understand what I'm trying to get at. So I ask your patience. Chapter 37. We'll start right at verse 3. I'm reading from the New International Version, or I'm reading from the New English Translation, sorry. You'll have these words. It says, now Israel loved Joseph. Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was a son. Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was a son born to him late in life. And he made a special tunic for him, a robe. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated Joseph and were not able to speak to him kindly. Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. There we said, listen to this dream I had. There we were, binding sheaves of grain in the middle of the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, and your sheaves surrounded my sheaf and bowed down to me. Then his brothers asked him, do you really think you will rule over us or have dominion over us? They hated him even more because of his dream and because of what he said. Then he had another dream and told it to his brothers. Look, he said, I had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him, saying, what is this dream you had? Will I, your mother, and your brothers really come and bow down to you? His brothers were jealous. His brother was jealous of him, but his father kept in mind what Joseph said. When his brothers had gone to graze his father's flocks near Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I will send you to them. I'm ready, Joseph replied. So Jacob said to him, now Jacob and Israel were the same person, just so you know. So Jacob said to him, go now and check on the welfare of your brothers and on the flocks, and bring me word. So Jacob sent him from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph reached Shechem, a man found him wandering in the field. So the man asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are grazing their flocks. The man said, they left this area, for I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now Joseph's brothers saw him from a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Now Joseph's brothers saw him from a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this master of dreams. Come now, let's kill him. Throw him into one of the cisterns, down the wells. And then say that a wild animal ate him. Then we'll see how his dreams turn out. When Reuben heard this, he rescued Joseph from their hands, saying, "Let's not take his life," oldest brother. Reuben continued, "Don't shed blood, but throw him in the cistern that is here in the wilderness. But don't lay a hand on him." Verse 23, when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his tunic, the special tunic that he wore. When they took him and threw him into the cistern, when they sat down to eat, then they sat down to eat their food. They looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming their way. The camels were carrying spices, balm, and myrrh down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and cover his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. But let's not lay a hand on him, for after all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants passed by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. The Ishmaelites then took Joseph to Egypt. For about the next 10 minutes, I want to help you understand or see. Just got to pose a question. What do you do when the very people close to you and that you love are the very ones causing your suffering? What do you do when the very ones that are close to you, that you love, are the ones causing your suffering? We can all attest to situations and relationships in which we've encountered where we've entrusted people and put our soul and our heart into people's hands. And the very people we've entrusted we've tried to get close to and feel out to be close to us, and the very ones who have created in us or for us our own struggles. They've created, I don't know who I'm talking to this morning, but maybe it was a relationship that you had, whether it was a mother that went astray or just abandoned you, or a father who was supposed to be a certain way and just turned out to be broken-hearted, or whether it was a grandma or a granddad or uncle or aunt, or maybe it was a husband or a wife, or whatever the situation is, but they just created in your life so much hurt and pain. So it got to a point where you literally thought that you just couldn't go home. And sometimes when that happens, we have a tendency to start to blame ourselves, or start to put the blame on ourselves, and start to really feel like sometimes we want to quit or give up. And here is a situation in which Joseph, who was a young man, 17-year-old young man, who, because of a relationship he had, the closeness he had with his father, his brothers looked at it enviously and started to hate him, started to treat him harshly. They made fun of him. They stripped him from the very personal things that meant so much to him. His dad gave him a special tunic, a special coat. This was all these beautiful colors. It meant a lot to him because of, he had lost his mother to death, and in the birth of his brother. And so it meant a lot to him to get something so precious, so valuable, so special from his father. And because of the relationship he had with his dad, his brothers looked at him in a jealous manner. They started to treat him harshly. They started to put him down. They started to talk about him in his presence. And so, but even though they treated him this way, he still longed to be in their company. He still longed to be a part of the family. He still longed to have a relationship with them. And even in the midst, as you go through the text and look at how, even when his father had started to tell him to go and check on his brothers, even though he had been treated so badly, he could have said, "Dad, you know what? I don't care about them. Dad, you know what? No, they the way they treat me, I ain't going and check on them. Matter of fact, I hope they don't ever come back." Come on, be honest, people of God. We've all found ourselves there when we start to respond in a way that's not godly based on how we've been treated. And what I'm trying to get us to understand is, here's a man, a young man, who's modeling principles at an early age that demonstrates really what it's supposed to be when you're connected properly. he's obedient to his father's instruction. Father gives him the direction to go and check on his brother. And he accepts it knowing what he's going to is not going to be something that's going to be received in a positive way. They're not going to be standing around singing Kumbaya waiting for Joseph. They're not going to have a campfire in his honor. They're not going to have a parade in his reception when he comes up, because they don't want him around. And he knows they don't want him around, but yet he's still willing to go forward and see about them. And from that moment forward, regardless of how Joseph shows up, he's being treated in a manner that could easily take any of us, if we put the script in play in our lives. The real truth is, the way some of us show up, I don't know if I could have did what Joseph did. Because honestly, I would have been thinking about all the stuff they did to me, and I would have been like, man, I'm about to get mine. But Joseph shows us the kind of heart that God wants us to have. He goes to see about his brothers. They've made fun of him. They treated him harshly. They talked about him. They put him down. And yet he still is obedient to his father's request to go and see about his brothers. And not to the point to just go see about them, but they're not where they're supposed to be. And so he's searching for them. Now listen, Joseph wasn't innocent. I'm being honest. Joseph wasn't innocent. And we all, most of us, maybe not all, but we've had family members or close friends, whether they're young or old. But you know how you have those people in your life that they just sometimes can get under your skin? Well, Joseph had a tendency to kind of get on his brother's nerves. I mean, come on now. I know I got a little sister, man, back in the day, she made me want to just punch her. Let's just cut through the chest. And you know, everything you do, somehow mama find out about it. And they just can't hold water. And so you just learn not to do nothing around them. And so here was Joseph now. A lot of the reason that his brothers was like, we don't want you around because you so close to daddy. Everything we do, you gonna tell daddy. But my question to be is, what you doing that you don't want daddy to know about? Because if daddy can't know about it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. But because Joseph had this habit of wanting to tell or share or tell everything, they didn't want him around. And so here, Joseph now is in a position where he's going to check on his brothers, and they see him coming. And because they have so much animosity or hurt or hatred toward them, he says to them specifically, to his brothers, they propose to kill him. Now, I don't know about you, but that's deep. See, we're not talking about just some friends. We're not talking about somebody who's harmed me. We're not talking about somebody who's tried to do a threat to my family. We're talking about my brother. And even if he get on my nerves, or I don't understand, he's getting under my skin, is it worthy of me to plot to kill him? And the jealousy here that comes about because of this, now we have Joseph approaching his brothers. Now he's going with the right spirit because he's going to check on them. Their spirit is in opposite of theirs. As he's approaching, they're thinking all kinds of negative ways to respond to Joseph's presence. And as Joseph arrives, they're receiving him in a manner which is hostile. They're ready to do harm to Joseph. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about as you prepare to enter into hostile territory. You've entered into situations in which the people that you're going into relations or into their presence, they're not all receiving you the right way. It may not be family. Maybe it's people on your job. I don't know. People at school, whatever. But you know when you enter in, it's not a welcoming situation. But regardless of that, you still have to go with the right spirit. Because the enemy, even though he may be opposing you, you still got to show up with the right spirit. Listen, if you go with the same spirit as the enemy, then all that's going to do is create destruction in your life. And I'm telling you right now, if Joseph shows up with the spirit that his brothers had, nobody wins. And I'm going to help you see what I'm talking about. Because if Joseph's obedience in moving and following what God is telling him, that puts him in position to be a blessing to his people later on. And even though he walked into enemy's territory, his family, I don't know who I'm talking to. You can't get so caught up in what your family's doing and how they're treating you that you miss being obedient to God, because it's your obedience as you enter in to the relationship that you know might not be the greatest right now with mama or daddy or brother or sister. It's still your obedience in the relationship and doing it the right way that will create in you the opportunity for a later point to be a deliverer for them. And Joseph, in his obedience, is creating the opportunity, and they don't even know it yet. But he's creating the opportunity. God is using them to help Joseph be able to live and fulfill his destiny. And I just want to stop and pause to tag this title that it is my destiny. It's my destiny. And Joseph is an example of how when we are oftentimes moving in a direction that often looks like it's hard, looks like it's devastating, looks like it's going to be punishment, looks like it's going to be punitive, looks like it's deadly. God said, no, remember, I told you before, I have a plan for your life. And if you stay with me, I'm going to line it up for your benefit, for your good. And Joseph is a sample of when we do what God is telling us in obedience, and he'll use the very people that looks like they're devastation, looks like they're going to destroy us, looks like they're going to conquer us, looks like they're going to defeat us. He'll use them to elevate us to align with his plan for our life. Joseph goes to see about his brothers. Brothers receive him hostile. To the point they plotting to kill him. They gather him and throw him in a well in the ground. And then change course and sell him into slavery for silver. Their plan was to get rid of Joseph altogether. But what they didn't understand was, regardless of what their plan was, God's plan was totally different. That's right. And sometimes we're guilty of trying to operate on our own plan, people of God. And we get so sideways and off track, and God has to redirect us sometimes to get us back in line. And every now and then you'll find yourself in dark places or in low places just for God to bring you to a focus point to get you back in line with where he's trying to take you from the beginning. And here Joseph was, he got a little beside himself. God allowed him to see the vision of what he had for his people. And I love God in this, because not only is he a blessing to Joseph by using the enemy to help Joseph align with his destiny, but God says the situation had to be one in which Joseph understood what God was showing him in the vision, in the dreams. But the mistake Joseph made was assuming that by sharing it with his brothers, those who were close to him, that they would understand and receive it in the same manner. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but you got to be careful thinking that everything God is showing you that you share with your close people, that they're going to be excited to receive it in the same manner. Everybody that you share your vision, your dreams with, they ain't going to be happy for you. They're not going to line up and cheer with you. They're not going to stand around and pat you on the back. Some of them will hate on you and be jealous and try to even block it. But God said, what is for you is for you. What I have for you, can't nobody stop. And Joseph is in a position now where even his own brothers are trying to block his destiny. They're trying to stop him from being around. And God is in the middle of working the whole thing out. But the enemy, the brothers, and all of them don't even understand. They're just pawns in the game. They're just part of the destiny that he has for him. And so as he moves about and has his way, Joseph is sold into slavery. And what I love about it, not only does God, see, God, not only has he prepared Joseph by showing him, he first prepares Joseph by showing him the dream, the vision that he has, not just for Joseph, but for his people. And see, as the dream is interpreted later, if you look at this, see, you read chapter 37, 38, 39, spend time in the book here, Genesis, the latter part of the book is awesome. Because what I love about this message is that it shows you where not only does God intervene in Joseph's life, but he's using Joseph to align and fulfill promises about taking care of his people that are in captivity. And so he uses Joseph, just like he used Moses. Remember, I told you he planted the seed with a purpose for Moses. It's the same thing with Joseph. All the children they had, but it was only through Rachel that the seed was planted for the deliverance of his people. Here is Joseph now being cast into a low place, into a dark place, into a well. He's now taken out, sold into slavery, goes forward into Egypt, and is in Potiphar's house, who is the guard in charge of overseeing all that Pharaoh had. Now, he could have ended up in a lot of places, but God positions him. So not only does he prepare him by showing him what he has, but then he positions him in the right connections with the right people so he can get what he has for him. He puts him, he could have put him in a negative position. But even though he's going through persecution, because remember, Joseph's mind, you think about it, you're in captivity. You're a slave. And you go from being a slave into you're sitting with the guard who is in charge of everything under the king. And your relationship with the guard gets to a point where he now trusts you with everything himself. Wait a minute, hold on. This ain't what I expected. Because the enemy remember, the enemy's point was to destroy you. They've now played a role in elevating you to a position you didn't even expect for yourself. Now, not only are you in a relationship with the person who has authority under the king, but some other stuff starts to play out, and I can go into detail about being tempted by the woman, Potiphar's wife, and all of that that triggers so many areas that Joseph had to struggle to get through. But listen, all of it lines up for one reason. It's to get him to a position that God is using him to bless his people. And so Joseph deals with not only being elevated to a position, he deals with being fallen from that same position because of something he didn't even do. He was accused falsely of being of raping Potiphar's wife, and he lied on him. You ever been lied on? You ever been talked about? You ever been mistreated and thrown into prison because of something he didn't even do? Some of us right now are dealing with some of the same things. We're facing some of the same stuff. It's not new, but it's part of your destiny. You got to understand it's part of your destiny. Because you can't get where God is taking you without going through the process. And Joseph understood, he understood that the vision was about God. He understood it. But what he didn't know was, see, he thought it was all about the prosperity. He didn't understand he had to go through so much persecution. And sometimes we so caught up in getting the prosperity, we don't expect to have to go through the persecution. And listen, people of God, in order for us to get what God has for us, we got to go through a level. We have to go through a level of growth. There'll have to be some persecution. There's some stuff that's going to come after us. There's some stuff we're going to have to deal with. And here's Joseph, a perfect example. He could have just quit. He could have just gave up. He finds himself now in prison, dealing with because of something he didn't even do. And then he's in prison, but God, because of the Spirit of God and his ultimate plan, His ultimate plan was for his people to be taken care of. And Joseph is the one who's going to be the provider. He's already revealed it to him. But now it's about him continuing to be obedient in it. And what I love about Joseph is every time he had to deal with a crazy situation, I love the way he responded. He never got negative. He never quit. He never thought about giving up. He always just continued to, whatever the situation was, he just continued to be confident and faithful and walk his way right on through it. If you look at the text, you never hear Joseph complaining. You never hear Joseph talking about giving up. You never hear him. So how he responds to the situation is critical. People, I want to encourage you to understand what I'm saying to you. You're not going, listen, this life is not about not dealing with issues. It's how you prepare to respond to them. It's critical for your survival, for your development, for your forward progress. Because if Joseph had that kind of mindset, he would have never been able to take the next step. And the next step is what was elevating him eventually to ultimate leadership. And so he's in prison. And I love this because he's in prison and he starts to have a relationship with the inmates. Not that way. I don't want nobody messed up in here. But he's starting to commune with the inmates. And he's starting to have a relationship with the guards who are overseeing the prison. And in the midst of that, because of two other men who, because of their just lack of doing what they're supposed to, they're cast into prison, and he develops a relationship with them that are close to the king. And so because of that relationship, they get back to their position. He interprets a dream for them in the prison. And don't miss it. If you're not in the right position, you miss the opportunity for God to use you to ultimately elevate you to a position that he desires for you to have. And so if he's never in the low place, he never gets to the high place. And sometimes we're struggling because we're a low place. We don't want to deal with the low place, but I'm going to encourage you to celebrate your low place. Because if you're in a low place, you ought to be able to get excited because that's the only time for me to get to a higher place. And Joseph's low place was just the beginning of his elevation to a higher place. He's in the prison. And God is using him to minister to these other men. And it's because of his relationship with them that in a later time, not that time. See, we want it right now. But God said, no, it is not right now. It's not the time. He spent years in prison. I need you to catch this. Before his true reward came. He spent years dealing with the stuff that he was accused of. He spent years being punished for something he didn't do before his true reward came. Okay? There's stuff you're dealing with and you're trying to figure out, you want the reward right now, and God said, it's not your season yet. This is not the blessing season for you. This is the growth season. This is your persecution season. This is your pruning season. This is your season for me to go through correction for you, to get rid of stuff you need to let go of. This is that season. And so when you get through with all of that, and I finally get you to a point where you're ready to receive what I have for you, because I know when you get it, you'll appreciate it and you can handle it. Joseph was going through a period of growth, development. And so as he started to have these relationships, thank God for him. Because it's because of his patience and his obedience. He's in prison and he's connected to now the cupbearer and the baker and the chef. And as they go back to the king's palace, one makes it, the other didn't, based on Joseph's prophecy and his revelation of what his relationship was with God. See, God don't let people who are not connected to him see everything. The king kept having dreams too, but he didn't know what they meant. He didn't know what they meant. The cupbearer, they had dreams. They didn't understand, they didn't know what it meant. So Joseph, because of who he's connected with, was able to tell them what the vision, what the dream was all about. A trying to help you understand. That's why you can't get mad at folks when they don't understand what you're talking about.
That's right.
Because God is showing you stuff that they ain't ready to see. He'll let you see it because you already, you can handle it. But they can't. And so when you start talking to them about it, they're looking at you like you crazy. They start saying stuff like Joseph's brother said. Do you really think you gonna rule over me or his father? Do you really think we gonna bow down to you? But when God's in it don't matter who you are, what your position is. He'll reveal to you stuff that other folks, regardless of their tenure, don't understand. You can't get twisted because it's a young man and his father was an old man and he still didn't get it. And he was a man of God. Catch that. And so, the cupbearer, the baker, their relationship with Joseph now puts him in a connection with the king. And I love this because the king has a dream too, but he don't know what it means. So he's asking for people, can somebody help me with this? And although Joseph only request for the men he had helped in prison was, don't forget me. And they forgot him for a long period of time. But at the right time, they remembered, oh, guess what, king? There was one I met when I was in the prison that you put me in, who can interpret the very thing, he can do the very thing you're asking him to do. And so the king calls for Joseph. Joseph then uses the gift, the talent that he placed inside of Joseph to bless the king. And the king then is excited because he now understands. And what I love about this is Joseph's vision from before that he shared with his brothers wasn't received with the right spirit. But here's the king being shared with the vision. He receives it graciously. He has the authority to say, I don't believe it, and cast him back in prison. But he listens to Joseph and falls in line with the dream, the vision, because the vision now is clear to him and says, you're going to have 7 years of prosperity. But that's only going to set you up if you do what you're supposed to do to deal with the famine you're going to have to go through. Let me help somebody that don't understand that. You're going to be blessed for 7 years. You're going to have prosperity. You're going to have more surplus. You're going to have abundance. But there's going to be a dry season in your life. There's going to be some stuff that dry up, and you ain't going to be able to figure it out and understand it. But because if you take care of the stuff the right way, when you got it, when you need it, it'll carry you through dry season. Yeah. It'll carry you through barrenness. It'll carry you through. And I just want to help somebody this. Some people are sitting here in your relationship. You're struggling trying to figure out why these people have created so much hardship in your life. And God is trying to help you understand it's your destiny. It's part of your destiny that they got to come through. You got to have interaction with them because they're validating who I am in your life. You see them, and I'm trying to help you understand that it's your job to save them. It's your job to preach to them. It's your job to minister to them. Because without your vision, the people die. And as we realign ourselves to what God has for us in our end result, destiny is your destination. You don't determine my destiny, but you're a part of it. Joseph now is in position. He's prepared by getting the vision. He's now positioned in the vision. And he goes forward in provision. Because God is providing exactly like he said he would. If you go back from the very beginning, he told Abraham, He said, you're going to have seed that's going to multiply, cover the earth. He said, if you make me your people, your God, I'll make you my people. I will provide for you no matter what happens. He is now doing exactly what he said. He's using Joseph because the people in Canaan, there's a famine. They have no food. And his brothers have to come to Egypt to get fed. And the very one that now is the one in charge, Joseph is now elevated because of the trust of the king. He's now elevated to the second in command. The real truth is, Joseph was more powerful than Pharaoh because he was obedient from the beginning. Joseph's in position to not be a blessing just to himself. See, he's living large. But listen, he's now also in position to be a blessing to God's people. The people are coming to get fed by the one who they thought least of in the beginning. I want to help you. In your mind, you don't see yourself as the feeder. You don't see yourself as the one who is the supplier. God will use you to be the supplier in your family. He will use you to be the blessing to his people, your people, and your family, to his people, regardless of how you show up. Joseph is in a position. Yeah, he was hurting when they kicked him out. Yeah, he was sad when the way they treated him. You don't think he was broken? You don't think that hurt his feelings? But you know what? He didn't quit. He stayed. He went, and even though they sold him into slavery, he had to go through torture. He had to go through being mistreated. He had to go through being in prison. He had to go through being lied on. He had to go through being persecuted. He had to go through all of that to be put in a position to be a blessing to his people. His father and his brothers are coming to get food in Egypt. And who do they have to stand before to get food? They have to go and bow down before Joseph. But Joseph's heart did not harden. He didn't have the kind of heart, the kind of spirit of revenge. Matter of fact, the real truth is, if you look at chapter 45, when he starts to talk about his faith, and he finally opens up and he starts to cry and weep when he hears about his father, and he asks about his brothers, because Joseph loved his family. Even though he needed to grow up some, he still loved his family. And even when he was finally elevated, and God used him to get to a different position, he was a blessing to his family. I want to encourage you today. The relationships you have created all kinds of emotions in your life. They've caused some of you to feel like quitting. They've caused some of you to feel like giving up. They've caused some of you to even feel like walking away. Whether you're in marriages, whether you're in just husband and wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, whatever your relationship is, it's never a point where God is trying to destroy you. You have to understand what God's plan is for your life. Ultimately, it is the destiny he has for all of us to experience the kingdom. And so how do we get to the kingdom if we don't go through the developmental process? Joseph went through the process. He lived in that kingdom. And his relationship, his elevation, what I love about him, he didn't get selfish. He didn't get hatred. Some of you have moved up. You moved into better positions. Who have you looked back to help? It's just a question. When the very one that you love and care about is causing you pain, causing you hurt, you have to have the right spirit. You have to have the spirit of forgiveness. Joseph had that. You have to have the spirit of obedience. You still have to be able to go forward when God is telling you to do the right things. How hard would it have been for for someone who treated you so bad to show love to them in their greatest time of need. Do you have that spirit? That is my charge for all of us. It is required for us to live in the kingdom. It is required for us to experience eternal kingdoms. It is required for us to experience living in the vision that God has for us. How can we go after lost souls if we don't have the right spirit? All right? So as we stand and reflect on those relationships that have caused us so much pain, I want to remind you that it is your destiny. They're part of your destiny. You can't look at them negatively because God is using them to position you for the right thing. He's using you. He's using them to help you get to the right position. And he's using them to help you align yourself in the right way. This is what my prayer is. Would you lift your hands with me? Dear Lord God, I pray right now that we have all been under situations where we've encountered relationships that have caused us pain. And oftentimes from those who are very close to us. But Lord God, we know that you're only using them to help us to reach our destiny. Because ultimately our blessing is that we will be a blessing to others, just like Joseph. Even though he had to go through the ups and downs, his low points, his hurts and pains, ultimately he was obedient and he was able to be elevated to a position to help his people, to help your people. That is my prayer for your people here. That we will never forget the purpose that you have for our lives. There may be one today that don't know you for themselves. Today may be a day that they step out on faith, enter into a relationship with you, that they get to know you better. There may be someone here who maybe they have given their life to Christ, but they got outside of the ark of safety. Maybe they don't have a church home right now. Maybe today is the day that they'll step out and unite with this church. Lord, I pray that prayer in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.